Let's now cut across to Washington, D.C., where U.S. President Joe Biden is giving his statement after meeting with the Israeli President Naftali Bennett.
We will complete the mission. Now, I'm not going to take any questions because of the Prime Minister being here on Afghanistan now, but I'll be available at another time. But it's great to have the Prime Minister here. We've become close friends. He's ridden the Amtrak train a lot from New York down to Wilmington, Delaware. I told you we have a few corporations in Delaware back in the days when he was in private practice. But he heads and leads the most diverse government in Israeli history. And we've got a big agenda today, starting with COVID, which we've been talking about, and 19 in both our successful vaccination programs. And we've talked a little bit. We're going to continue to talk about the issue of booster shots. And you started your program a little early. It's met with great results. We're going to start mid-September, but we're considering the advice you've given that we should start earlier. And this is promising also this booster program. It's going to start here on September the 20th, pending approval of the FDA and the CDC committee of outside experts. And the question raised is, should it be shorter than 8 months? Or should it be as little as 5 months? And that's being discussed. I spoke with Dr. Fauci this morning about that. We're also going to discuss Israel's unwavering commitment that we have in the United States to Israel's security. And I fully support replenishing Israel's Iron Dome system. And we're also going to discuss the threat from Iran and our commitment to ensure Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. But we're putting diplomacy first and seeing where that takes us. But if diplomacy fails, we're ready to turn to other options. We'll support Israel's developing deeper ties as well with the Arab and Muslim neighbors and globally. That's a trend that I think should be encouraged, not discouraged, and we're going to do all we can to be value-added. We also are going to discuss ways to advance peace and security and prosperity for Israelis and Palestinians. And we're also going to direct our teams to work toward Israel fulfilling the requirements of the visa waiver program so we can get that done. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to thank you again for coming. The U.S. will always be there for Israel. It's an unshakable partnership between our two nations. And I have known every Israeli Prime Minister since Golda Meir, gotten to know them fairly well, and I look forward to us establishing a strong personal relationship as well. So welcome.
Moving on, a day after the deadly blast killed dozens of people at the Kabul airport, evacuation operations have resumed, and with that, scenes of chaos and disorder continue to emerge from in and around the Kabul airport. As thousands are being evacuated from the country, the past 12 days have been nothing short of a nightmare for the 40 million Afghans. Now, for more on this, joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Ahmed Mohibi, the president of Rise to Peace, a counter-terrorism organization. Mr. Ahmed was also a former advisor with the U.S. Department of State and Defense. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we just heard a statement earlier from the U.S. Pentagon which put the emphasis on saving American lives and continuing with evacuation. What's your assessment of the U.S. stance in all of this?
Well, what's happening in Afghanistan is a humanitarian crisis, is a disaster and it's chaos, and it should not have happened. The President Biden administration, his team should have put together a plan months ago, not now. The United States Armed Services, men and women, should have not been sacrificed and should have not been killed. And thousands of other Afghans should not have been wounded and killed. Speaking right now, we need an immediate cessation of Afghanistan, and I'm happy to see that our government is trying to take this issue seriously. The Taliban are an insurgency group that operates across Afghanistan in different places, and they have state sponsor of terrorism. They are Daesh, they are Al Qaeda. The threat is there. The national security of the United States, allied and other countries are at risk if we do not pay serious attention. So giving in Kabul, we need a lot of troops, not from United States, but we need more from international community to go and help Afghans and end this humanitarian crisis. We are talking about thousands of people outside the gates of the Kabul, making their way with hopes to get into the airport. How about the Taliban, the checkpoints, killing people, execution? So I see a military intervention in terms of saving American lives, at the same time saving Afghan lives, running for their lives, is a good policy and a good plan. But this should be a better strategy. We're talking about execution is the most important thing. You could make hundreds of plans and policies, but the way you execute is the most important one.
Absolutely. Now, the deadline of 31st August is fast approaching, with several countries already ending their evacuation missions. Do you foresee more such attacks in Afghanistan in the coming days?
Yes. It's a country, it's on high alert. As I mentioned, Taliban, they're trying to secure the airport, because for the Taliban, any attack that happens, it doesn't look good. So that's why they put their Badr unit. The unit is called Badr. It's one of their special forces. Right now, it's surrounded the entire airport, making sure no one gets hurt. But at the same time, there are Taliban who doesn't want people to leave. There are Taliban who doesn't want peace. Majority of them, of course, they want Islamic Emirate. They want to have to rule Afghanistan the way they want. But they are a little bit smart. In a way, their strategies have changed. They want to bring the 1990s, but they don't want to bring it the way it was. So they want to bring it with more killing them softly. So I think the August 31st is not an ideal plan. And I'm repeating again that whether it's President Biden and allies, they cannot abandon Afghans. These are interpreters, they are colonels, special forces, commandos, their own citizens and green card holders. So as of right now, I'm working on a task force myself, trying to bring people inside the airport. You cannot simply walk away.
Right. Now, Ahmed, the Taliban have taken control of the country. In your view, can the Taliban deliver when it comes to keeping the country safe and not letting it become a breeding ground for terrorists?
There's no way that you could trust an insurgency group. Having trust in the Taliban is a hard thing to do. Look, they made a deal with the Taliban, with the United States. They promised a lot, but then start killing them left and right. As the civilian casualties and violence increased since the deal. So the Taliban needs to show it in action. So while we're speaking, yes, we see not a lot of Afghans being killed. That's a good thing. That's a good news. But how long that's going to last? But we need to also talk about the nightly executions of Afghan commandos, officers, and other activists happening right now. So the Taliban needs to stop executing people, beating them left and right on the streets. But they have to show to the world that they want to fulfill their commitments. Promises should not be taken for granted. You have to look at their actions. What is it that they are saying? In the region, Taliban, that it's a factor of local insurgency, guerrilla warfare. But the Taliban are way beyond that. So they are still sponsors of terrorism. There are big sponsors and foreign fighters that have a strong influence in the Taliban. I think a friendly Kabul administration is needed to have good relationship with its neighbors and the world. I think if Taliban could compromise and could fix some of their policies, there could be a good chapter of peace for Afghanistan. Otherwise, the prolonged war, the history is going to repeat itself.
My final question for you, Ahmed. The U.S. president has vowed revenge for these attacks. Should the U.S. prepare for a more potent terror threat following these explosions? And how is Biden's handling of the crisis being perceived as of now?
Well, President Biden, he cried. Instead of crying, he should have made a better plan. He will cry more if he does not take this seriously. We have to have more troops on the ground right now. We have to make sure our Marines and armed forces are safe, and you have to make sure Afghans are getting into the airport are safe. So I think we're looking in the future. A good plan with a good execution, good leadership can literally save this. Otherwise, what's happening right now, it's not promising.
Ahmed Muhibi, thank you so much for all your inputs and insights, and thank you for joining us on WION World is One. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.